Hello.
Hi, everyone.
We are live here at the end of August in our lovely homes in Truro, Nova Scotia. How you doing, Michelle?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Yeah,
Good.
it's like it feels like a fallish day, and that kind of I know there's people who are summer lovers who will hate me saying this, but it kind of feels good to feel
I
like there's
love
a
fall.
breeze.
You know what is kind of funny? This week would have been exhibition week if
Oh
life was
yeah.
normal, and it would have been great exhibition weather, of course. But
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, it's
yeah,
crazy to think that we don't have an exhibition this year after I'm not sure how many years
oh
consecutively we were,
gosh.
but gosh,
Well,
since
and it's the signal of, the end of summer, kind of. So it's weird to think of August without an exhibition. So
I know, yeah, it's kind of like getting ready for back to school is that's sort of the
mhm.
trigger for a lot of folks.
Yep.
So we have a friend and guest today with us. She is the executive director of the Colchester East Hants Hospice Society, and she's a close pal of mine. So we are going to bring her on. Here
Yay.
is Stacey Harrison.
Hi,
Hi.
Stacey.
So I feel like I kind of twisted your arm to be here, Stacey, but I'm so happy that you agreed.
Maybe just a little bit. She had me when I can talk about all things hospice.
Exactly. That's why I sent a message to say, I'm like, well, what about Stacey? And she's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. She's gonna like the short notes.
No, she knows me well. So, and like I said, I'm happy to chat about what we do here. So,
Wonderful.
so glad to be here. Thanks, Hugh.
Yeah, no, it's great. So tell us, because I think a lot of times right now, people aren't really sure if nonprofits are functioning the same way that they have been in the past. Who is up and running? Who can you still go to see in person? And should you be making calls instead? So maybe just give us an idea, Stace, with hospice of what programs are happening or what you guys are doing day to day.
Yeah, so summer is traditionally a quiet time, just like most businesses. So what we decided to do after we finished our kind of COVID-19 operations plan is, as a team and an organization, we decided that we would come back to the office because we, 89 Queen Street, our office here, we can social distance. So we made that decision. And what we wanted to do is make sure that people had an opportunity if they chose. So it is by appointment only. It's not open to the public, but we, both Laura and Jane have made specific appointments. They've stopped in, but like I said, it's by appointment only, not drop in. But it is mask when you get here. It's similar parameters that you would at most businesses. We're going to kind of play it by ear. The anticipation is we'll stay this way probably till mid-September until we kind of find out what back to school means. And then we'll make sure that we communicate if anything changes. One of the benefits, I guess, and we've got Autism Nova Scotia. So between the two organizations, we're kind of following each other's lead and make sure that both are comfortable here, and they're the same. So until that changes, we're status quo at appointment only.
Now, for people who don't, oh, sorry, Sam, for people who don't necessarily know what hospice is, people, I think, get confused around probably the word hospice. So what do you do at that beautiful building on Queen Street?
Yeah. So we are office only. We've had some people still think that we have patients on site, but that isn't the case. It is offices only. We work in partnership with the Health Authority, which when they built the new facility have a beautiful new unit designated to palliative beds. So it's kind of like an indirect partnership that we try to complement the work that they do on the medical side. We went through a bit of a strategic planning process when I first joined. So we are the anomaly in the province. There's 14 hospice societies in Nova Scotia, and we are the only ones that do grief and bereavement. Outside of the hospice in Halifax, that is a hospice residence, but they do offer grief support as well. So why we did that, it was more, what do we have in our own community of Colchester East Hants, and how can we actually complement the services that we have available now? So that's why we moved to more grief and bereavement, more outside of the medical supports that some of the other organizations, help support for more palliative patients. We're fortunate here. I'm biased, of course, but there's so many organizations that work collaboratively together that I think we're in the best position where we are. So that's why we kind of opted for a different route, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. And, you think about grief in the time of COVID and how important that service is for people, and really just letting people know that you guys are there to help with that, or whether it's direct help or pointing in the right direction to somewhere else. It's so important, particularly around all the other stuff that's kind of happened in our community around that. I mean, you guys are a great resource for so many folks.
Yeah, and again, I can't speak highly enough of some of the collaborative partnerships that we have, like even mental health and addictions, CMHA. So what we tried to do is, if it falls outside our scope, that we're not just leaving people saying, you know what, I'll have to call you back, or we'll have to reach back out once we find an answer. So we've kind of created pathways that if it falls outside of our scope, we've got somewhere to send them and not feel that person's being left. So Jane and Laura both worked really hard, specifically through COVID, but then we got that extra layer of the tragedy that happened. And then it was just like, a whole different bunch of parameters. So they've spent a lot of time kind of updating resources. So they're available online. If people call, we're happy to mail material out. And with COVID, I guess we're more fortunate. There is silver linings to that piece of it, because the government has stepped up, which we don't receive government funding. So we were able to take advantage of the Atlantic Compassion Fund grants that the United Way were able to administer. We updated and rebranded. We have someone that's pretty awesome at some marketing and social media that helped us out with some branding. So we were able to.
You could say it's this one, not this one.
Right out there. But it was nice to actually kind of make things a bit more consistent. So like I said, we were able to rebrand, update with just some language, get them printed. Sid Cell Signs, like I said, was amazing. They did all of our printing, and some of them, they actually helped supported us at no charge. So between the two, we've got all kinds of resources, with a little bit extra through that fund that we're happy to mail out if it does fall outside of our area, because they are amazing resources. So there were silver linings for not-for-profit. I know specifically for us, but I know for others as well. They were able to leverage some of those kind of unexpected pots of money, which is nice.
And that's what our community, you hate to see such terrible things happening in any community, but when you do see those terrible things happening, it's really when people do step up. Like you think about, for example, like you said, Sid Cell Signs. That's just one example, but recognizing the value of what it is that you guys are offering, and then putting some of their support behind it, I think is just so great. And we're so lucky to have such supportive businesses and organizations in our community.
Yeah, and I don't think people realize, I mean, I've obviously worked in other areas, but this is probably one of the most collaborative. Like if you ask and they believe in what you do, there's no negotiation. It's, you know what I'm in. And there's been a couple of projects just recently that all of our team, so there's 5 on our team, all of them support local. So that was kind of right out of the gate. So anytime we do have a project on the go, that's where we just kind of leverage all those relationships. And like I said, we've got a hug in the box, which is meant for children that may necessarily not be comfortable coming in to meet with Laura, but still need something that, the parent or guardian that can use to kind of walk them through some of these situations. So, and again, Andrea sourced out all kinds of sensory fidget for us. Dawn in aromatherapy did a specific grief blend for aromatherapy. Sarah at Calling Corners specifically chose 2 grief stones to include in that. So I can't speak highly enough of, and it seems small, but when overall, if you can present something that literally represents Colchester East Hants, it's pretty awesome. Yeah.
It
So
really
we're
is.
lucky.
And there's example after example of that in the community. I mean,
Totally
not just
is.
hospice, but like with all nonprofits, I feel like we do that. People just step up. And of course, you mentioned Andrea, who's from Enchanted Forest, but you know, we're so gonna miss some. Like when you hear that she's leaving, and we certainly aren't, you know, holding any grudges. We understand, but at the same time, it's like such a whole.
It's almost like a panic.
Yeah. And I know you guys had a partnership with, or still have, I should say, a partnership with Clay Cafe, I think, too, with the cute little hug pins.
We do. So she did small pins for us and demoed the most amazing mug that right now it's a limited edition display only until she agrees to do more for us. Actually about 15 years ago, Gerald Shearer started the wooden hugs that we had to leverage. And when I first started, I was very, very fortunate to be able to meet him and kind of get his blessing on moving forward with sharing the love story that he had with his wife, Helen. So we've decided to branch into a hug line of product because he's not able to do the wooden hugs anymore. Although we have a lovely father of one of our volunteers that's continued to make some, but they're limited edition. So we're highly selfish with those. So like I said, Jamie, she had a couple of different ideas. We've got some T-shirts and we've used that grief blend, and it's just not a huge revenue stream, but it's just continuing to share the story and highlight some local businesses in our area. And Sweet Spot Chocolate Shop's another one. We've done the chocolate campaign for a number of years now for Valentine's. And like I said, they're just all amazing. So we've kind of put those all together and we have them here at the office, but also Totally Local actually retails all of them as well for us. So there is a spot that people can drop in. So again,
I got to paint some of those hugs at the United Way.
You totally did. Yeah.
And it was so much fun. It was so just sitting there, such an easy thing. And they were just great. They're such a great, you know.
Yeah. I didn't realize. So if you think about it, I was going through some material. So I've got all former ED's material in my office that I'm sorting through, and just the thank you cards and stuff. Like those wooden hugs have gone as far as like Afghanistan. They've, gone globally because it's just, whoever needs a hug, they're able to ship easily in the mail. And so it's just kind of neat that, one small show of gratitude has literally been 15 years. So
and it's pretty cool too. I mean, it was something really relatable, particularly during the pandemic too. I'm not speaking in the past tense because I know it's still happening, but where it's like sending a virtual hug, that sort of message where we can't be together, and especially after the mass shooting and some of the other things locally that were kind of our instinct was to gather, and we weren't able to. Send a virtual hug was such a great message.
No, we did really well on that. We actually had them distributed through the online ordering system at the farmers market, and what I anticipated, you never assume, right? We actually ran out. So that just goes to show that people were using them as projects for kids at home or themselves, and kind of paying it forward, which felt really good during that time. And like I said, we're still in it, but kind of that March, April timeframe wasn't easy for a lot of folks. So so it made a big difference.
But you guys really stepped up, and I mean, I maybe know this because I'm close with you, but I think the community noticed too, Stacey, that you guys really, like you said, you stepped up those online resources at a time when people really needed them. And you were featured a couple of times too, like on CBC, and doing interviews to kind of guide people to where they should go. And of course, your dad, Larry Harrison, did some interviews. It was like the Harrison, you never knew which Harrison you were going to see. But I think the fact that you guys were that kind of at times that face of those conversations at that time was just so key for our community, because it's those recognizable faces that you trust, that you're like, okay, I know where I can go.
And I think a lot of people too didn't realize, like those of us who were not directly affected didn't realize that it was grief that we were feeling. That you just had this, I mean, grief is not an unfamiliar feeling for any of us, the three of us. So it felt so deep. And I was like, why is this bothering me so much? But you were there to help the community when we were feeling this grief that we couldn't really describe, we couldn't understand, which, is a huge benefit to our area.
Yeah, I'm totally biased, by the way.
You're allowed to be biased.
We have a pretty awesome team, and it's amazing that we have only been together a year. We jokingly said that we were remote at the time, but the way everything complements, I'm beyond excited. And like I said, they were happy to step up, and we kind of complement each other just in terms of brainstorming to see if one of us didn't think of something, the other one did. And we're a small team, but we certainly did the best we could to make sure that they were very practical resources. They didn't overwhelm, which is why we kind of went for the 1-page option for a lot of them. But yeah, I mean, there's lots more exciting things to come, but I think it was a good start. Good start. Yeah.
100%. And going back to Michelle's point too, like, I think you oftentimes don't think of loss that isn't death as grief either, but around the pandemic, you think about people losing their jobs or and sort of the trickle effect of what losing your job means, possibly losing your home, possibly losing whatever the trickle effect of that is, losing connections with people, but all of that relates back to grief, and I don't think that we immediately connect those dots.
No, and I think that was the hardest for people because and I'm only speaking, this is from my own perspective, from what I saw, but there was so many other things that I think people felt were so much more important that some of the other ones just kept getting buried and compounded. And I think that's where you guys are right. They didn't really kind of correlate what was happening and call it grief. So I mean, we're going to see more of it as people kind of work their way through, but it was hard on so many people on different levels that I think we just need to acknowledge that. And I think a lot of times they just need to feel that what they're feeling is normal. And I think if we do that, then we would have served our purpose. And if we can do more, that's even better. But yeah, just normalizing it.
And Alana just commented, for many, and she's totally right, for many, it was losing their routine. And you think about that day to day, getting up, going out of the house to go to work, as opposed to, walking down the hall and that's your commute. It's, it just really threw people off for sure.
Yeah, it absolutely did.
Yeah. So aside from the online resources that you have, you had mentioned the Hug in a Box and that you guys are happy to mail things out to folks. What maybe describe a little bit more about what those resources are, Stacey?
Yeah, so obviously we have 2 booklets. That one is Coping with Grief, and it was amazing. It was done by a social worker a number of years ago, Jan Allen, who I'm giving total kudos to. And it's just really practical things like sleeping, nutrition. It's not overwhelmingly medical piece of it. So we've kind of updated some of the language and reprinted that. Then to complement that, there's more of a medical one as to what to expect when dying, and that's more obviously physical. So we have those 2 resources, but then Laura and the team brainstormed what we call the Hug in the Box. So we wanted to kind of brand it, but what it is, it's activity books for children, young adults. I will confess, I might have one at my desk. So they're more fidgets, but the activity books is like just allowing people to draw things that would remind them of the person they loved. Thinking putty. There's a feather in there for breathing exercises. There's the rocks, that Sarah picked out that are meant to, energy around grief, and then aromatherapy. So we've kind of compiled all of that in just a wooden box that they can customize. Charlene, our admin, actually painted it with chalkboard paint. So when they're gifted, they can customize it however they they choose, and whenever they need it, there's some tools in there that they can use. So like I said, we've got a number of those here that we were able to do compliments of the Atlantic Compassion Fund and United Way. So they're here. Laura's given it some to her clients, but if there is somebody that may not feel that they need to come see us, but would like one, we just take the information. And like I said, we're happy to mail any of those resources out to folks.
That's awesome. So I already know about the hug in a box, so I have to be perfectly honest, Stacey. I was tuning out because just a little bit, because you mentioned Janet Allen.
Yep.
Just as a complete sidebar, not related to hospice whatsoever, I was in Footloose with Janet Allen. I am positive.
Okay.
If I'm thinking of the same Janet Allen, I need to investigate this now after this call, because I'm about 90% sure that she and I were in Footloose together.
Maybe. She was before my time, even before I joined the board. So I only met her like a handful of times. So I'm not sure if she's musically inclined or not.
But I'm going to find out, and I will circle back to you, I promise. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah,
obviously, that's completely taking away from the topic.
All good.
And can we do a little shameless plug as well now too?
Oh, I would love to. So one of the things that I'm slightly biased of, Sam, I'm beyond grateful that Sam thought enough of our team to kind of reach out and ask us to just do a quick run through of Hank's Ball, which is kind of the second book that Joey and Sam did based around grief. And I love Hank. So that we were able, with some additional funds from United Way, we actually purchased them too, to have them here in our library. So we have a lending library that has both adult and children's books, all kinds of different themes. And I feel very fortunate that we can add those to our library here. And we also have some extras that are available to clients if Laura and the team feel appropriate. So. And it's sweet. And Laura was so excited. We called Hank by his name and we said, you know what, he died. So she was quite happy with.
Well, and and that was the thing, because our first book was about bullying, and the language around bullying is a little bit easier to absorb. It's a little bit more comfortable for me. And of course, Joey's a psychologist, so he has a good background on kind of what language kids are using around that topic. But when it came to grief, we were just a little concerned that we weren't necessarily using the proper language. So it was important for us to kind of reach out to you guys. We reached out to Cindy Smith as well. Of course, I want to say a grief doula, but I feel like it's called something, end of life doula. So basically, just so that we are making sure that it's going to translate down to the kids, so that it's not, it's using the right language.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't say most, a lot of the resources are based in the US and come from publishing companies down there. So to have something Canadian, Nova Scotian, and right here, I think is even more amazing. So I love the book. And we do have some signed copies, which I think are even more important. And I love the book.
So here's even more of a shameless plug. If you want to get a copy, you can go to my website. I'll put it in the description after the chat.
Yeah.
And also, I have to plug my pal Amanda Bent too, because Rose and Poppy Creative, she did the illustrations of our first book, Hank's T-shirt, and then of course we asked again if she was interested. P.S. We already have our third book. Not written, but the concept is there. So stay tuned. The pandemic is doing wonderful things for my writing. So hopefully have another one.
And I think
trilogy.
Right? I like odd numbers, Michelle. You know this. So I have to.
I know.
One of the favorite parts of this book, guys, and it's not, I don't think it's just for the children's book, and it's okay to not be okay. And I think that's ultimately what our mandate is as our team, is just making sure that people know what they're feeling is totally normal. It's unique, it's yours, and we'll support however we can. So, and I think that was the part that resonated with me the most, is it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, there is no
Parents, I would
expectation.
think, have a hard time I mean, as a non-parent, but explain death to children. I think they forget the kids kind of clue into things a lot faster than we think they do. But, I remember growing up, my dad was one of 9 kids and he was the second youngest. And of course, he was in his late 40s when I was born. So he lost all of his siblings kind of during my lifetime, 1 or 2. And, watching my dad grieve kind of taught me, okay, it's okay. This big, strong man can, so I can be sad about, uncle whoever, aunt whoever passing away. So it's, and I think it must be of benefit to the parents as they're reading as well, because you say grief is a hard topic. I mean,
It's tough.
About it, and people just always used to joke that, well, not even joke, that people don't want to talk about it in case it happens to them. So, death just becomes a taboo topic.
Yeah, and I think I mean, my background isn't in this field. So one of the things I always struggled with, and I guess it's come more of a business side of it, is like the one kind of the value that we have is it's going to affect everybody, but we're the one that's thought of last in terms of, I mean, we're blessed to have so many amazing organizations, but we're the one that people really don't want to think about or talk about, because you're exactly right. It's that taboo topic. Although I do sense there's a shift, what that's going to look like moving forward. We're fortunate, right? Because we are not for profit. I've got an amazing board of directors. We've got 13 that are pretty dedicated crew that are allowing us to say, if the need's there, then you can pivot pretty quickly. And I'm empowered to do that for a lot of things. And so we don't get caught up in some of the other pieces of it and have to go through the approval process. It's usually a quick email and to the board to give that approval if we feel is necessary. So we're just going to take one day at a time and certainly help with whatever we can, for sure.
That's all you can do. And it's so funny that Cindy just posted a comment, because I was just about to give props to her and Sylvia both, because I think it was around the time that you started with hospice, Stacey, that Cindy and Sylvia started, and maybe you remember what they were called. I have no idea off the top of my head, but when they started, and they had
before I die.
The board.
And they had the board by the farmers market, and the idea was to start to try to normalize that conversation. And I feel like in our community, with the pandemic, with us kind of all feeling like we're on the same page in some sense of community grief or whatever it is that we're experiencing, I think you're right that shift is going to come, and it takes people like you guys at hospice and Cindy and Sylvia and people in the community, and Alana too. I don't know if Alana's still on the call, but she's been very vocal about her grief, to just continue to have these conversations so we don't feel so alone when we're going through it.
Yeah, and just I think I'm Cindy and Sylvia's one of their biggest fans. So they've been so supportive of our organization, just in terms of, I mean, Sylvia in a number of different ways, but most recently is, the tote. And then she, did a quick spot with us at the farmers market with the bucket lotto tickets. Cindy was one of the ones that reviewed and critiqued the updated Coping with Grief booklet. And again, you can't, I don't know if you can ever thank people for that support. So yeah, huge fans in this building, for sure.
And I like what Cindy said in her comment to Stacey. I don't know if you can see it there on the side, but how we teach our children how to be a good person, how to get and keep a job, how to be kind and responsible, but we don't teach them how to die and how to grieve. And I think that's so important. And it's those day-to-day, and there's more on that list of the day-to-day life skills that I don't think that and I'm not pointing the blame at parents and teachers. I'm just saying that in normal conversations, we just don't talk about those things enough.
And I think that's where when the decision was made to bring Laura McNatt on, who Laura's was specifically children and youth, and I think that was the whole idea for supporting that was to help us give parents, teachers, whoever, some of the tools that are going to be able to support the different age demographics, because everyone learns differently, they suffer different experiences. So that was, I think, one of the most important factors in deciding to bring Laura's position to hospice. And like I said, exactly. It's just the tools to help them support. They don't necessarily need to talk to somebody in a lot of cases. Sometimes they do, but a lot of times it's just whether it's through the book or, websites or activities that are just going to at least start the conversation.
Oh, we just lost her.
That's the best we can do.
We lost you for a second there, Stacey.
Oh,
I don't know what happened to you. It was magical.
Yeah. So yeah, just those tools, I think, is really what we're trying to do, at least in the short term, until we can work through some of this stuff and really identify more of the specific needs. But so we'll continue to, build on the resources, normalize it as much as we can. And like I said, with the network we have, and I think the community is on board to continue to do that. And unfortunately, we had to run into situations like what happened in April to kind of bring it to the forefront. And I'd never wish that. But I think if there is a silver lining, it might be just to normalize some of those conversations so we can move forward and help as much as we can.
And it's like Alana just said too in the comments, is that it's adults too. I mean, I was
sure.
talking about how we need to have those conversations with our kids, but how many things, when you think about and you put it into perspective when things like this happen, but then to actually take that next step and put it into action in terms of getting your will done, all of those steps to end of life, it's not something to be sad about as much as it is something to be logical about, I think.
Yeah.
It just is, it's only right to do that when you are healthy, or when, when you can think about it in a clear headspace.
We were having a conversation with Cindy, and I don't know if she's still on the line. And it was just it was a very casual conversation, and we were talking about some of the challenges. And she had the most amazing deck of cards that had questions on it, and it totally resonated with me because they were. You kind of chose the card, and you could actually internalize it a little bit, being an introvert. I thought, how amazing is it to be able to have even something as simple for that as adults to say, have you ever thought of? And even if they choose not to do, the more advanced stuff, even if they can just think about it and communicate it so those around them, when the time does come, that they know what their wishes are. And I thought those were pretty amazing. So kudos for Cindy to finding those and sharing them with us that day, because it was a neat exercise even for me. And we do it every day. So
I went through a period, I mean, when my parents were still here, that we had the power of attorney in place. And it was a friend of theirs who suggested it because, of course, with my mom with dementia, he kind of recognized that something was up. And he said that to my dad. He was like, you guys should really consider this. And dad, was like, I don't know. Not to give all the power to me. But then, of course, he said, it'll make Michelle's life easier. And it so did, because I had a friend in a similar situation who didn't have that and had to go through all of these hoops and things. And I preached to everyone I met about power of attorney. I'm like, if you have, a situation where you're worried that something's going to happen, it's so important. It's so key. And people don't think of that because they think, of course, of their will. What's going to happen when they die? But it's the process of leading up to when you're dying. When my mom was, dying from the day she was diagnosed. So it's very much about keeping everything in order and making sure that everything is easier for the people you leave behind as well. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And there's so many things to think about that you don't, like cremation or burial, you know, music, no music, celebration, funeral, like even there's so many things that I know I would make assumptions and I don't know if I'm right.
Yeah.
So I think the more we encourage and I think for us, that's more the advocacy piece in, you know what, let's just get people talking about it now. So when the time comes, they're not wasting that precious time dealing with, you know, legal or banking, you know what, they've at least thought about it, and it's a quicker decision, so they can focus on what's important.
Yeah.
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 Those are called Go Wish cards, Stacey.
Go Wish. Thank you. I'd never seen them before, and those definitely resonated with me for sure. Just so simple and thought-provoking. And obviously I'm talking about it, and that was probably a month ago. Yeah.
Well, and you guys, so, and again, I know this is a hospice insider, but you guys just announced that you are bringing back the hike for hospice.
We are.
Wow, which is another cool awareness.
Yeah.
When events, and you guys, like, there's not many events happening, so it's kind of cool that you guys have one coming up.
Yeah.
So we wanted to do 3 and kind of make sure that we included all communities, and obviously that from a safety perspective and a resource perspective, not practical. So we did make the decision to do it here in Truro, but we are going to do it at the Fundy Discovery site. So we're all kinds of space, the amphitheater, you know, washroom facilities. So we're going to do that if people want to join us, and there'll be parameters in place for safety of our team and our volunteers, as well as the walkers. But if you're nervous or don't live here, it's one of the things there's a lot of people, and we quickly found that out, that you don't have to live here to support us if, you know, you've got loved ones or hospice has touched you in some way. So that's why we did the 2 options. So we are doing a virtual one that you can download, and just, you know, make sure you share whatever part of the country you are with us on that day, and we'll also be at the Fundy Discovery site if everything remains as is. But we've got a Facebook event page, so if any changes, and we do have a couple things planned that we're just going to hold those cards just a little bit tighter until we can make sure the safety parameters are in place. But we'll advertise that as we get a little bit closer, once we know that we can move forward with it. So we're doing everything we can for sure to bring people together and feel supported, but not. We are all pretty grassroots, basic, practical resources, I think, is what we're aimed for, and hopefully the community is finding them useful to this point. Yeah.
I just think it's exciting to have events back, and especially, and I am biased, I will admit. I am definitely biased, but and to have an event with the Hospice Society right now seems like a great fit, and I sense that maybe you'll have Alana and Cindy taking part in the Walk for Hospice. For hospice.
No pressure or anything.
No pressure on Cindy, but really go on and register. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I think it's just great that we can get the community together to support something like hospice right now. It seems like a good fit.
Yeah, people are, I mean, it's not just us. Any not-for-profit is challenged with kind of what they are and aren't able to do in terms of fundraising. And most of them, it's a huge piece of how they operate. So we decided to do 2 different options. And like I said, if everything stays status quo, it will be amazing to see some faces, even though they'll be masked, just to offer that little bit of one-on-one support. We're going to be happy to do that, and some of our volunteers will be available, and yeah, look forward to the 13th of September.
The 13th of September answers your question.
Yeah. It's going to be on Sunday. It's going to the walk's going to start at 11, but we're going to be there at 10 for registration. We are going to have it marked off. There's going to be we're going to go to the pond, which is going to be about 5 kilometers. But again, just if you're not able to walk and just to join us, there'll be obviously the amphitheater there that we'll make sure is available. And yeah, just to be together, I think is going to be so important. And yeah, it is a fundraiser, but at the end of the day, it's just being together for for however long we can. So
what else do you guys have coming up? Obviously there's that, and I know it's kind of hard to look to the future for any organization, but I have to ask.
We've been brainstorming some ideas, and we're certainly, I think all of us are just kind of waiting until kind of school gets back and settled and what that's going to look like. So what we're trying to do is just kind of keep the plans rolling. And as we get a little bit closer and we know what we're dealing with, that's when we're going to start to promote it. I know that's kind of vague, but it just seems like it can change so quickly that we're just going to continue. And as soon as the walk's done and we've got that couple of weeks of school under our belt, then we'll start to announce kind of more activities moving forward in the fall.
Yeah. And I think that's so true. Like you said, for so many organizations is that wait and see, and school is kind of that thing that everybody's hovering around. What will come next after we see how this goes? So
and I think you have to be sensitive too. I mean, people's time is valuable, and you want to make sure that if they're committing, that you're following through too. So there's always that balance of, giving them enough time to have something scheduled to support, whether it's programming or fundraising, but at the same time, what you don't want to not fulfill what you're committing to. And I think that's where we're at. So this will be the exception, I think. Like I said, we value people's time, and it's hard enough. So we're going to take one step at a time. And once the walk's over, we'll just continue to be available and as present as we can. That's safe and effective. So.
Because so many organizations too that had things planned in the spring postponed to the fall, and now they're going to,
the hike is traditionally the first week of May with Hospice Palliative Care Week, and obviously that totally got postponed. But I mean, everyone's been. You don't have a choice but to be flexible, and you just kind of pivot and adjust, and we kind of tried. The other thing is trying to balance. You're right. A lot of things did get rescheduled to the fall, so you want to be sensitive to what those organizations are doing too. So, the ALS walk was on Saturday, so we actually opted for Sunday, and there's a lot, but you want to be sensitive to that too, because we're all playing for the same community, right? So,
it's very true.
Yeah.
And great that you have that partnership, not a partnership necessarily, but that connection with Autism No Exception you're building too, right?
I know. I said to Leah, who's the coordinator for the Truro chapter, they have moved forward. They had 2 students here, and they were doing day camp. So the 2 students had 2 campers in the morning and then another 2 in the afternoon. And one of the things I said to her, when you do present your feedback to what that evaluation piece was, our entire team has a whole new respect for the diversity of children that are on the autism spectrum. And no matter what happens, that gift for me is, we know what they do and kind of the programs, but to actually see it firsthand and have a better understanding of what parents and respite and how important these programs are. I think it was pretty amazing. So I'm hoping she's going to be able to share that, because it certainly benefited us and kind of the work that both of us do. And it's kind of awesome that we both have the same territory. So Colchester East Hants. So it's been an amazing fit. So they've been with us about 1.5 years now. So hopefully that'll continue.
Yeah, well, no, exactly. I mean, it's such a beautiful space too. And to be able to maximize the capacity on the inside, why not, right?
I know. I have former colleagues that, being in sales and marketing at a hotel, you're always in the bowels of the hotel. So you're envious of the Victorian home on Queen Street that I'm now residing in. So
that's great.
Yeah, pretty fortunate.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And so we have kind of Michelle has crafted a regular question that we ask all of our guests. So if you've been watching, Stacey, you'll know what's coming. But if not, we're putting you on the spot.
Stacey's like, I know what's coming. So, of course, one of our categories for the Local Love Truro Awards is what's your most loved place to show off Truro? So that's my question. It's when somebody comes from out of town or family comes, where do you take them to show off our town?
I usually do a tour.
Nice. That's good.
I don't know if it's one. I like I mentioned at the beginning, I'm pretty biased when it comes to some of the local businesses. So it's usually like they need a couple of hours and we'll stop multiple places to reap the benefits of all my favorites. And there might be some strong-armed purchases in there. So. I don't know.
You really need this.
Yeah.
I totally do. And I think the one is Jason's mother that a couple shopping bags when we're done. But
well, great. One of our finalists this year is just downtown Truro.
Yeah,
I think is perfect because that's so true of so many of us. It's like, okay, we have to go here and here and here, and then go here for coffee and here for lunch, and it's not just taking to one spot anymore.
I will share because obviously you guys have been doing this in a huge support, but I remember just before I moved to this role, I was at a networking function with the Hotel Association in Halifax. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of one of the networking functions and we were going around and I just happened to start a conversation and they were talking about Truro. And obviously it perked and they were actually sharing that one of them had spent some time here and they were actually from another province in Atlantic Canada. And they were sharing how amazing and how much they have evolved. So kudos to everybody, because like I said, that's always resonated. And it's a bit of a motivator when you come in this role too, right? It's totally different, but at the same time, you want to be proud and support the people that are in the community. And
yeah.
So it was like, yay!
I know, and you feel so proud. And collaboration is a large part of that. People see the business community working together. They see the nonprofit organizations working together. Collaboration is a huge part of what makes Truro strong right now. And hopefully that just keeps getting stronger.
Yeah, I mean, it's all our responsibility to do it. And it's not easy sometimes because we all get siloed, but I think if we all make an effort, I think we're all moving in the right direction. So that's my plug.
Okay, it's great. And just so we know, Stacey, Mike is watching you right now, just so you know.
He's right there.
And he's saying that the kids are
in 3D.
Yeah, that's hilarious. And Alana's agreeing that it has changed a lot since she moved here just 7 years ago. I know it really has been just in the last 5 or so years that it's been shifting so much, and
it's something to be proud of. I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of us sometimes just take it for granted, but yeah, it's always a good reminder of we live in a pretty awesome spot.
We do, and the people, the businesses, business owners, nonprofits make it so easy to be proud. They're doing all the work and we're just happy to be here.
Well, and one of the most fun projects that I've been a part of recently was the tote bag project that we did.
That was amazing.
That was so cool.
Yeah, the feedback that we got, it was the diversity of the artists. Like there was something that resonated with different tastes. And personally, I didn't know what to expect. When you deal with some third-party fundraising, you just you support as much as you can for like social media and sharing, but I had nothing to compare it to. So that was amazing.
And neither did we.
We're like, maybe we'll make $50. But we had no idea going into it that people would be so excited about it and embrace it so much. And
I mean, if people aren't familiar and didn't have an opportunity, I don't think one of the totes went below 3 digits. So that's pretty awesome for just something that we were trying, and beyond grateful that we were recipients of that. So thank you both for that.
Oh, yeah, very welcome. No, it was cool to see. But
it was an easy sell for the artists too. I was just gonna say, they were all super keen to get involved.
Yeah, and it was different, and I think that's where some people think the more traditional, the walks and the more traditional fundraising, I guess, and that could be a lot of things, but it's things like that. And we were fortunate that Oak Island shares the dream. We were, I mean, who would have thought that core samples from Oak Island would reach like globally? Poor Mike was shipping them to everywhere. And just things like that, it was just outside of the box. And I think that's, for us, it just differentiates it just a little bit. And that's kudos to the community that are coming up with this. And for the most part, we just support it. We don't take our resources, so we can kind of focus on the programming piece of it and doing what we do. And obviously that helps us support that financially. So yeah, it was pretty awesome.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good note to end on, Stacey.
Yeah.
And we'll just do another plug that if anyone's interested in doing a third-party fundraiser.
I mean, I think a lot of people out here probably know me and know that I'm pretty open to brainstorming whatever. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. No, well, thank you so much, Stace, for joining us.
Thank you.
And we will stay tuned to obviously the Hike for Hospice coming up and anything else in the future. And good luck managing the unknown in the future.
Yeah. Thank you. We, like I said, we're pretty have an awesome team here. So we're just gonna keep motoring on, and we'll do what we can. So, but thanks. I mean, opportunities like this don't often come up that you just get to talk about what you love. So thanks.
Thank you.
So it did work out in the end. All of my
So Sam, when you get a messenger message from Sam and it says, "I don't think you're gonna like what my idea is," and then you see 4 messages underneath. But usually they work out in my favor, so I trust you.
Awesome. All righty, thanks so much. And we'll just do a final plug. If you haven't voted yet for the Local Love Awards, please do. We have the top 5 in each category at locallovetruro.ca, and you can vote until the end of August.
Yeah, we've got lots of ballots to come in. So
we already have over 1,000, yes?
Yep, we do. So I love going into that email and seeing it grow. So
yay. So Truro is showing up, but there's still time if you haven't yet. So get your votes in.
Yeah.
And we will see you next week with another chat. Thanks to everyone for tuning in and participating.
Bye.